In a world that often values material success and individual achievement, it can be easy to overlook the stories of those who have known hardship from the very beginning. Behind the facades of comfort and stability, many face daily struggles that seem distant or irrelevant to everyday life. Yet within this complex fabric of society, there are individuals whose journeys defy conventional expectations, people who transform personal loss and rejection into acts of profound resilience and generosity. It is within this context that we find the story of a man who started with nothing more than a humble childhood marked by abandonment and hardship, but went on to create something extraordinary, a sanctuary for those society often leaves behind. This man's early life was filled with uncertainty, living in shelters and making do with whatever scraps of comfort could be found. His nights were spent in cold, shared beds, often with strangers who, like him, sought refuge from the instability that defined their existence. It was a life that many would consider bleak, yet from these early days, a spark of hope and a desire to build something different emerged. He recognized the pain of displacement and understood what it meant to be rejected, something that shapes a person deeply and leaves an indelible mark. His experience was not unique, but it became the catalyst that pushed him to turn his story into a force for change. As he grew older, the desire to break free from the cycle of hardship became more urgent. Determined to create a different reality not only for himself but also for others facing similar circumstances, he embarked on a journey that would take him far beyond the limits set by his childhood. Yet his path was not straightforward. It was littered with obstacles, from scarce resources to societal indifference. But each challenge only fueled his resolve. With ingenuity, unwavering dedication, and an empathetic understanding of what it means to be cast aside, he started building not just physical structures, but a community, an environment where rejection could be replaced with belonging, cold beds with warm ones, and despair with hope. This story is about transformation, how someone who once knew the harshness of sleeping in cold, shared spaces and feeling cast away can become a builder of warmth and refuge. It challenges our assumptions about what it takes to make a difference and highlights the power of perseverance rooted in genuine compassion. The journey is not about grandiose ambitions, but about small, intentional acts that accumulate into something meaningful. It asks us to reconsider notions of worth and success, emphasizing that sometimes the most profound impact comes from those who have endured the most. As we look deeper into this man's story, we begin to see how his early pain became the foundation for a mission to create homes, not just physical shelters, but spaces filled with dignity and hope. In doing so, this narrative touches on a universal theme, the possibility of rising above personal adversity to serve others. It invites reflection on our own assumptions about privilege, hardship, and the potential for transformation. It shows how someone can turn life's darkest chapters into guiding lights for others who feel lost or forgotten. The story is a reminder that, even in a society where many are driven by individual success, real change often begins with one person daring to see beyond their own struggles and extending a hand to build something better. This is the story of an ex-orphan who not only overcame the cold nights of his youth, but used those very experiences to create warm, welcoming homes for families rejected by society, demonstrating that compassion and resilience are powerful tools for shaping a more inclusive and caring world. Building upon the foundation of resilience, it becomes essential to explore how genuine empathy can serve as a catalyst for sustainable change within marginalized communities. The man's journey demonstrates that true understanding extends beyond mere sympathy. It requires immersing oneself in the realities faced by others, gaining insight from their lived experiences, and recognizing the systemic barriers that perpetuate their hardships. When he began constructing homes, he did so with a consciousness that went beyond the physical structure. Each brick laid was infused with intention, rooted in an awareness that a single shelter might represent not just safety, but an assertion of dignity. This depth of empathy necessitated active listening, which often involved engaging in conversations that revealed personal stories of rejection, hope, and resilience. These narratives serve as the blueprint for designing spaces that genuinely meet people's needs, rather than imposing predefined solutions. Furthermore, this approach challenges traditional charity models that tend to treat recipients as passive beneficiaries rather than active participants in their own transformation. His methodology emphasizes co-creation, where community members are empowered to influence the design, layout, and purpose of their homes. This participatory process ensures that the structures are tailored to their cultural practices and daily routines, fostering a sense of ownership that extends beyond physical possession. When individuals see themselves reflected in the spaces they inhabit, it profoundly impacts their sense of agency, which in turn cultivates confidence to pursue other avenues of personal growth. This perspective underscores that social change cannot be entirely top-down. It must be rooted in authentic dialogue and shared ownership of solutions. The societal implications of this philosophy are significant. It illustrates that addressing homelessness or displacement involves more than simply providing shelter. It's about reweaving the social fabric that holds communities together. In this context, the act of building is intertwined with efforts to restore trust and rebuild relationships fractured by years of neglect and rejection. When these individuals see tangible evidence that someone believes in their worth, a ripple effect begins. Hope reignites, and aspirations expand. The community becomes a living testament to the belief that everyone deserves respect and an opportunity to thrive, no matter their starting point. This dynamic emphasizes that sustainable change hinges not only on physical infrastructure, but also on fostering a collective spirit of inclusion and shared responsibility. Another vital dimension involves exploring how such initiatives can serve as a blueprint for broader systemic reform. By demonstrating how targeted, compassionate interventions can generate tangible, long-lasting impacts, this model undermines the misconception that poverty or homelessness are solely individual failures. Instead, it highlights the structural failures that often trap marginalized groups and how innovative, community-centered responses can challenge these entrenched patterns. Now consider how this insight applies when policymakers and social organizations examine the root causes of displacement. Investing in preventative measures, education, and employment opportunities complements physical acts of rebuilding. The man's example reveals that genuine transformation requires weaving together multiple layers of intervention: physical, social, educational, each reinforcing the other to create a resilient web of support. Equally important is recognizing the ripple effect that one person's commitment can generate within the larger social ecosystem. What begins as a personal act of constructing homes for rejected families can evolve into a movement that inspires others to reimagine their roles within their communities. It demonstrates that impactful change often starts with small gestures: an extra hour of work, a conversation, a donation of resources that accumulate over time. Now picture how this principle applies beyond the immediate context. When individuals see how their actions, no matter how modest, contribute to a larger purpose, they become more engaged and motivated. This dynamic transforms passive observers into active architects of societal regeneration, illustrating that the collective power of committed individuals can alter the trajectory of entire communities. Ultimately, the story underscores the importance of perseverance when confronting deeply rooted social issues. While initial efforts may face resistance or apathy, continued dedication signals a refusal to accept status quo realities. Every house built becomes not only a refuge but also a testament to resilience in the face of systemic neglect. These efforts serve as tangible symbols that change is possible, even with limited resources, when driven by unwavering conviction. Now consider how this applies when you encounter seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Persistence, driven by a clear purpose, can turn the tide over time. The man's journey exemplifies that meaningful transformation often requires sustained effort, patience, and an unshakable belief in the capacity for renewal, both individually and collectively. This perspective invites us to see beyond immediate setbacks and recognize that enduring commitment can ultimately forge pathways toward a more inclusive, compassionate society. Building on the transformative impact of sanctuary creation, it becomes essential to recognize the profound significance of fostering a sense of communal identity that transcends individual structures. When these homes are not merely isolated shelters but interconnected symbols of collective effort, they evolve into more than physical spaces. They become embodiments of solidarity. This shift from individual altruism to communal participation imbues the entire process with a deeper purpose. It encourages residents to see themselves as active agents of change, rather than passive recipients of aid. By establishing shared spaces for community gatherings, educational initiatives, or cooperative initiatives, the social fabric becomes resilient. reinforcing mutual dependence and fostering trust. These collective centers can serve as catalysts for social cohesion, transforming isolated households into vibrant neighborhoods united by common goals and shared values. Furthermore, cultivating communal identity through collaborative projects can dismantle long-standing stigmas attached to marginalized groups. When community members work together on building or improving their environment, stereotypes dissolve in the face of shared effort. Neighborly relationships solidify as individuals recognize each other's strengths and vulnerabilities, breaking down barriers rooted in prejudice. Such interactions foster empathy and understanding, gradually transforming perceptions from suspicion to genuine appreciation. This social healing plays a pivotal role in long-term reintegration, as it nurtures a collective pride that sustains community resilience even when external challenges arise. The process of joint development stimulates a sense of ownership, making the community less dependent on external interventions and more motivated to maintain and improve their environment independently. Another layer to this interconnected model involves the application of skill transfer and capacity building. As community members participate in constructing their homes, they acquire practical knowledge, be it carpentry, plumbing, or sustainable building techniques that extends far beyond the immediate task. This empowerment cultivates self-reliance, enabling residents to undertake future projects, maintain their surroundings, and face unforeseen obstacles with confidence. The ripple effects of this empowerment extend to local economies, fostering a cycle where skills are passed along, new entrepreneurs emerge, and a culture of innovation takes root. Now, consider how this paradigm shifts when you recognize that skill development becomes a foundation for broader social mobility, offering pathways out of poverty and opening doors to economic independence. It reframes the act of creating homes as a conduit for holistic community upliftment rather than mere shelter provision. Simultaneously, addressing the intangible dimension, emotional healing, is crucial for sustainable reintegration. People who have endured rejection or displacement often carry invisible scars that hinder their ability to fully engage with community life. Contributing to the building process can serve as a therapeutic journey, helping individuals reclaim agency over their lives. It provides a tangible sense of accomplishment that counters feelings of helplessness and disempowerment. Witnessing the tangible fruits of their labor often sparks renewed hope, igniting aspirations that might have been dormant. This process also invites a shift in personal narrative, moving from one defined by victimhood to one centered on resilience and agency. Cultivating such resilience becomes vital for long-term stability, enabling individuals to weather future hardships with fortified resolve. Another essential aspect to consider is how revitalizing a community's physical landscape influences its cultural fabric, anchoring collective memory and fostering identity. When new structures incorporate elements of local traditions or cultural symbols, they reinforce a shared sense of belonging. These architectural details, whether decorative motifs or construction techniques, serve as tangible links to heritage, connecting past, present, and future generations. Such integration nurtures pride and continuity, helping community members feel rooted in their history, even as they move forward. Now think about how this connection to cultural roots can serve as a foundation for defending community interests, advocating for resources, or resisting external pressures that threaten cohesion. The physical environment thus becomes a vessel carrying stories, values, and collective aspirations, transforming mere shelter into a living testament of identity. Finally, embracing a long-term perspective reveals the importance of cultivating adaptability within these communities. As circumstances evolve, whether through economic shifts, environmental challenges, or social transformations, resilience depends on flexibility. Fostering a mindset that welcomes innovation and continuous learning permits communities to adjust their strategies, ensuring sustainability. For example, introducing renewable energy sources or rainwater harvesting systems can reduce dependency on external aid while promoting environmental stewardship. Encouraging local initiatives to develop micro-enterprises nurtures economic diversification, lessening vulnerability to external shocks. Now consider how this capacity for adaptation extends beyond physical infrastructure, fostering an internal culture that values growth, learning, and shared problem solving. The community begins to see setbacks not as insurmountable obstacles, but as opportunities for collective ingenuity. This mindset guarantees that, regardless of future uncertainties, The community remains anchored in hope, equipped with the resources and resilience needed to navigate change tirelessly. Consider how the act of rebuilding can serve as a catalyst for transforming community governance, prompting residents to develop new mechanisms for decision-making that foster empowerment and collective accountability. When individuals participate directly in constructing their living spaces, they acquire more than physical skills. They gain insight into how systems, whether social or administrative, can be shaped through collaboration. This participatory approach often ignites a sense of ownership that extends into governance, encouraging community members to assume roles in organizing local initiatives, mediating conflicts, or advocating for resources. Such grassroots involvement cultivates a form of organic leadership, rooted in shared experiences and mutual respect, that proves more sustainable than externally imposed hierarchies. As a result, local authority begins to resemble a collective endeavor, with each person's voice contributing to shaping the community's future, whether through informal councils, cooperative decision-making, or communal rituals. This dynamic not only decentralizes power, but also prepares the community to respond more effectively to future challenges, as leadership becomes intimately tied to the people's lived realities. Furthermore, immersing residents in the physical process of reimagining their environment can uncover innovative solutions rooted in local knowledge, solutions that outside experts might overlook or dismiss. For example, individuals who have worked with local materials, climate patterns, or traditional construction techniques can adapt these practices to contemporary needs more effectively than standardized models. This integration of indigenous wisdom and modern technology generates hybrid strategies that are more resilient, affordable, and culturally appropriate. It also fosters a sense of pride and continuity, reinforcing the idea that their unique context is a valuable asset rather than an obstacle. Now consider how this principle applies in broader policy frameworks. By valuing community-specific insights and fostering participatory planning, governments and organizations can craft interventions that resonate more deeply with local populations, ensuring that initiatives are embraced rather than resisted. The convergence of expert knowledge with grassroots innovation creates a fertile ground for sustainable development that is both contextually relevant and deeply rooted in the community's identity. Another layer worth exploring involves how the physical act of building becomes a form of storytelling that preserves and celebrates local history. Each new structure, wall, or communal space can be infused with symbols, murals, or inscriptions that narrate stories of resilience, ancestors, or shared struggles. These features work as visual reminders of collective memory, strengthening bonds among residents and anchoring them in a common heritage. In a tangible sense, the community's landscape becomes a living archive, fostering a sense of continuity that withstands external pressures to erase or distort historical narratives. Now, imagine how this visual storytelling can be integrated into educational initiatives, allowing younger generations to connect with their roots through art, craft, or oral tradition embedded within their environment. Such practices not only cultivate cultural pride, but also serve as informal lessons on perseverance and adaptation, values that are vital for facing future uncertainties with confidence. Building on this, consider how the physical transformation of neglected spaces into vibrant community hubs can act as a form of social therapy, healing wounds inflicted by social exclusion or systemic neglect. Restoring degraded areas, planting gardens, refurbishing dilapidated structures, or creating communal murals becomes more than a beautification effort. It becomes an act of collective reclamation. These revitalized spaces serve as venues for communal gatherings, celebrations, or skill-sharing workshops, shifting perceptions of what their environment can represent. When neighborhoods visibly transform from symbols of neglect into vibrant centers of activity, residents internalize a renewed sense of possibility and belonging. This psychological upliftment can catalyze a ripple effect, inspiring individuals to pursue personal development, entrepreneurship, or civic engagement, which further reinforces the community's resilience. Now consider how this process can influence external perceptions, attracting interest from allies, donors, or governmental agencies eager to support models that demonstrate genuine community-led transformation. When outsiders witness the tangible results of inclusive rebuilding, spaces that reflect the community's identity, stories, and aspirations, they are more inclined to invest not just financially but also emotionally. Such investments in turn can lead to a reinforcing cycle. Increased resources enable further development, drawing in additional stakeholders who see the community's potential rather than its deficits. This shift in perspective can challenge stereotypes that frame marginalized communities merely as recipients of aid, replacing them with narratives of emerging self-sufficiency and ingenuity. Consequently, the physical and social metamorphosis of these environments becomes part of a larger discourse that redefines notions of development, highlighting that authentic progress stems from grassroots initiatives grounded in dignity, shared purpose, and local empowerment. Now consider how the act of transforming neglected spaces into vibrant community environments can influence individual identity on a deeply personal level. When residents witness the physical metamorphosis of their surroundings, they often experience an awakening of self-worth that extends beyond external appearances. This process can serve as a mirror, reflecting their capacity for change and reinforcing a sense of agency within a broader societal framework that often relegates them to the margins. The gradual reclamation of space becomes a symbol of reclaiming oneself, emphasizing that ownership of one's environment correlates with ownership over one's future. In practical terms, engaging residents in planting community gardens, designing murals, or refurbishing common areas encourages a participatory approach that nurtures personal pride and cultivates a mindset rooted in possibility. The deeper impact is that individuals begin to see themselves not merely as recipients of aid, but as catalysts capable of shaping their destiny through tangible, meaningful contributions. Furthermore, this physical transformation fosters a nuanced understanding of resilience, one that recognizes adaptability as an acquired skill, not an innate trait. When residents navigate the challenges of fixing up their environment, they develop a toolkit of problem-solving abilities, patience, and perseverance. These skills become transferable to other facets of life, whether pursuing education, seeking employment, or managing personal relationships. The metamorphosis of a dilapidated space into something functional and aesthetically pleasing concretizes the idea that obstacles are not permanent barriers, but opportunities to innovate. Now think about how this paradigm shifts your outlook on failure. Instead of seeing setbacks as insurmountable, they become stepping stones, each lesson embedded in the physical act of rebuilding. This active engagement in reshaping their surroundings cultivates mental flexibility, empowering individuals to approach future adversity with a growth-oriented mindset. Another important angle is how creating welcoming community spaces influences social cohesion on a macro level, especially when these areas are intentionally designed to promote interaction across diverse groups. Spaces that foster communal activities, whether open-air markets, outdoor theaters, or play zones, act as social equalizers, breaking down barriers that segregation or socio-economic disparities often impose. When people from different backgrounds gather in shared environments, they exchange stories, skills, and traditions, gradually knitting a fabric of mutual understanding. These spaces become grounds for forging new relationships, fostering empathy, and developing communal narratives that counteract divisiveness. Now consider how the strategic placement of such areas can amplify their impact. Situating a community gathering spot at the crossroads of various neighborhoods naturally encourages diverse participation. Over time, the collective memories created through shared events and everyday interactions anchor a sense of unity, making it more difficult for external forces, such as economic downturns or social conflicts, to fracture the community's sense of cohesion. Building upon this, however, is the recognition that these physical spaces also serve as platforms for activism and advocacy. When residents see their environment as a reflection of their collective identity, they become more likely to mobilize around common causes, be it advocating for better services, resisting gentrification, or demanding recognition for their heritage. The concrete becomes a canvas for storytelling, a visual assertion of resilience that can rally neighbors and outsiders alike. For example, murals that depict local history or aspirations can spark conversations that transcend daily routines, catalyzing community-led movements. These spaces act as living documents, embedding the community's voice into the fabric of the neighborhood, encouraging continuous dialogue, and fostering a proactive attitude toward change. As a result, physical transformation does not end in the aesthetic. It unlocks a social dynamism that inspires residents to take ownership of their future and challenge systemic neglect. Another compelling dimension is how strategic development of community spaces can influence environmental sustainability practices at the grassroots level. When residents are actively involved in constructing eco-friendly areas, such as rain gardens, compost stations, or solar-powered lighting, they develop a tangible connection to ecological stewardship. This first-hand participation elevates awareness about environmental issues and instills habits that extend beyond the immediate community. For example, children growing up in neighborhoods where sustainability initiatives are part of the landscape learn to respect and prioritize ecological health naturally. Such involvement transforms community spaces into experiential classrooms, where environmental responsibility becomes woven into daily life. Now, reflect on how this grassroots engagement can ripple outward. Empowered residents often serve as ambassadors for sustainable practices, influencing neighboring districts or even inspiring local policies that embed environmental principles into broader urban planning. The physical act of eco-revitalization thus becomes a catalyst for cultural shifts towards sustainability embedded within the community's identity. Finally, embrace the idea that these physical improvements can act as symbols of hope and stability during times of uncertainty. When an environment visibly reflects effort, care, and resilience, it becomes a lighthouse for residents navigating turbulent socio-economic conditions. Such spaces affirm that their community is a place where progress is possible, even if external forces threaten their stability. Visual cues, brightly painted walls, flourishing gardens, or clean sidewalks serve as constant reminders that perseverance has tangible results. These symbolisms can bolster collective morale, acting as anchors amid chaos. Everyone in the neighborhood begins to see these spaces not just as infrastructure, but as manifestations of their shared strength. Consequently, physical transformation becomes intertwined with emotional endurance, inspiring ongoing effort and fostering a sense that their community is resilient enough to face any challenge ahead. Drawing these strands together, we see an intricate tapestry woven from threads of resilience, community engagement, cultural identity, and sustainable transformation. Each element, though seemingly distinct, intertwines to form a cohesive narrative, where the act of physical rebuilding transcends mere construction and becomes a catalyst for profound shifts in collective consciousness. It is as if the landscape itself bears witness to a metamorphosis, where spaces echo the stories, hopes, and shared agency of those who shape them. The physical environment becomes a living metaphor for resilience, an outward expression of inner strength and tenacity, hinting at how environments and identities are mutually reinforcing. This convergence suggests that the process of renewal is not solely about material revitalization, but also about forging new pathways of connection that ripple through social, cultural, and environmental domains. In light of these insights, the path forward emerges with a sharper clarity, illuminated by the recognition that transformation hinges on the capacity to see beyond the immediate and tangible. It invites us to envisage communities not as static entities, but as dynamic ecosystems where each act of care, participation, and belief nourishes growth in unexpected ways. Central to this vision is the understanding that sustainable change is rooted in fostering a sense of ownership rooted in shared purpose. When individuals come together with a collective intention, whether to restore a neighborhood, preserve a cultural tradition, or cultivate environmental stewardship, each effort acts as a seed capable of sprouting into broader waves of societal regeneration. The cumulative effect is akin to a symphony where every note, every gesture contributes to a harmony that elevates community spirit and resilience. Reflecting on this journey so far, it becomes apparent that the core of what has been explored transcends the physical and the observable. It points toward an underlying dynamism, the power of human agency, fueled by empathy and vision, to redefine environments in ways that deepen their meaning and relevance. The spaces we inhabit are not merely backdrops to daily life, but become active participants in shaping collective identity. When communities embrace this truth, they ignite a process that is inherently transformative, not solely in brick and mortar, but in the intangible fabric of relationships, shared aspirations, and cultural continuity. The energy generated from this process is contagious, inviting imagination and ingenuity to flourish amid constraints. As we pivot towards the final reflection, it is essential to recognize that such transformation is not a singular act, but a continuous unfolding. It challenges us to consider how every intervention, every gesture of care, And every expression of ownership can serve as a cornerstone in building resilience, both tangible and intangible. The journey from cold, shared beds to cozy, vibrant neighborhoods symbolizes more than a physical shift. It embodies a mindset that values the inherent worth of every individual and the collective potential of community. This dynamic, once activated, has the capacity to catalyze lasting change, infusing hope where despair once lingered and planting the seeds for a future rooted in inclusive strength. As we stand at this juncture, poised to explore the final horizon, the overarching lesson beckons. Transformation is a multifaceted dance, complex yet driven by the simple truth that human connection, nurtured through deliberate action, holds the key to genuine renewal.